Before he was crooning power ballads in leather pants and getting smothered in whipped cream on cherry pie, the guy we knew as Jani Lane popped out of the Midwest womb in 1964 with a name straight out of the CIA Witness Relocation Program, John Kennedy Oswald. Yeah, that's not a name, that's a conspiracy theory with a birth certificate. You got JFK and Lee Harvey mashed together like some crazy cosmic joke. Eventually, he rebranded to John Patrick Oswald, which, let's face it, still sounds like a guy who sells life insurance at church picnics. But he wasn't about that khaki life. The kid grew up in Brimfield, Ohio, one of those all-American zip codes where the corn's high and the rock and roll dreams are even higher. He was a baby in a six-pack of Oswald kids, a real Brady bunch. Sisters Marcine, Michelle, Victoria, harmonizing around the dinner table while older brother Eric was already shredding guitar like a freaking madman. And by the time little Johnny could tie his shoes, he was teaching himself drums, piano, guitar by ear, like some kind of prepubescent mutant. No lessons or sheet music, just pure instinct and radio static from WMMS 100.7 FM. The Buzzard, Cleveland's rock temple blasting out Bowie, Zeppelin, Styx, and whatever glitter-stained glam gods were stomping across the Midwest airwaves. By age 11, while other kids were still figuring out cursive and how to eat glue properly, he was playing in clubs under the name Mitch Dynamite, a name that sounds like a guy who throws Molotov cocktails for fun and signs autographs on stripper heels. And the band? Poker Face. Which feels prophetic, because Lane would spend most of his adult life bluffing his way through emotional landmines with a grin and a bottle. And when the siblings all flew the coop, Daddy Ozzy Oswald stepped in, not with a belt or a lecture, but with club contracts. The man became this kid's unofficial agent, calling venues, greasing palms, making sure Mitch Dynamite got his spot behind the kit. A PTA dad turned rock and roll pimp. That is definitely love. By the time 1982 rolled around, Jani, or whatever the hell his name was that week, graduated Field High School with a diploma in one hand and a drumstick in the other, ready to trade homeroom for hotel rooms, suburban sidewalks for Sunset Strip sidewalks sticky with dreams and spilled beer. And the best part? The real chaos hadn't even started yet. So high school ends, cap and gown hit the floor, and John Patrick Oswald, a.k.a. Mitch Dynamite, a.k.a. future heartthrob of hair metal heartbreak, is definitely not off to college. He's off to the clubs. Straight into a band called Siren, spelled C-Y-R-E-N, which sounds either like a Greek myth or a street corner worker from Reno. So he's back on the drums, smashing skins and singing from behind the kit, with the lineup with Skip Hammond, John Weakland, Don Hoover, Rusty Phoner, a bunch of guys who sound like they work at a local auto body shop by day and rip through Zeppelin covers by night. Now picture this, somewhere between sticky floors and blown monitors, Al Collins shows up. He's from the band Risque, which sounds exactly like what you think it does. Fishnets, eyeliner, and dangerous decisions. Collins sees Lane, and he just knows. This kid's not just a drummer. He's got it. That frontman fire simmering just beneath the cymbals. So he ropes him in to this new Frankenstein monster of a band called Dorian Gray, which is about as subtle as naming your band Youth, Decay, and Cocaine. Colin wants Lane front and center. No more drum throne, just a mic and the spotlight. But Lane, he's hesitating a bit. Not really stage fright exactly. More like he knew he could sing, but stepping out front, that's like a whole different drug. And so he slinks back behind the kit, hiding that voice like it's contraband. And the group, featuring Stephen and Dave Chamberlain, who sound like twins that got kicked out of art school for setting things on fire, just keep on rolling. But Collins doesn't forget. He's got this vow, like some glam rock Batman. When you're ready, man, when you're ready to put down the sticks and grab the mic, we start a new band. One built around you. And that was the deal. And when Lane finally stepped up, the whole damn genre would feel the aftershocks. But right now, he's just a drummer with a secret weapon lodged in his throat and no idea what's coming. So it's 83, and the Dorian Gray saga packs up its eyeliner and existential dread and hauls ass down to Florida. Land of swamps, serial killers, and retirees with switchblades and their walkers. A few whack jobs thrown in for good measure. Sunshine State is not exactly the glam rock capital of the world, but for a guy like Lane, it's just one more stage. And somewhere in that muggy, sweat-soaked mess of humidity and broken amps, he finally does it. Drops those drumsticks and grabs the mic and steps right into the center of the hurricane. And that is when Plain Jane is born. New band, same chaos. Still with Al Collins, the guy who saw this coming all along, and now Stephen Chamberlain, who doesn't just reinvent himself musically, he mutates into Stephen Sweet, which sounds like a flavor of lip gloss or a dude who seduces prom queens and steals their mom's car in the same night. But here's the kicker. John Kennedy Oswald, the kid with the FBI's most cursed birth name, is not using it anymore. He switches to Jani Lane, spelled like a California motel. And it's actually pronounced Jani, thanks to his German grandparents tripping over English consonants. The name, it sticks, like gum on a strip club floor.
I'm Jani Lane.
And that name would go on the headline marquees, grace MTV, and get spray painted on bathroom walls next to lipstick numbers and promises nobody kept. But he's not some born frontman with swagger dripping from his ears. He had to train. Enter Ron Feldman, vocal coach and gatekeeper of the weird. Feldman takes Jani under the wing and says, hey, you want to learn how to sing? Come meet my robot band. Seriously. Feldman introduces him to Creative Engineering Inc., a joint that makes animatronic nightmares for kids' pizza joints. Most famously, the Rock-afire explosion. So Jani Lane goes from club gigs to programming singing robot animals like Duke LaRue, the animatronic drummer who looked like a spacefaring raccoon on acid. And so you gotta picture it, future glam god spending his afternoons wiring up robot dog limbs and syncing mechanical jaw movements to pre-recorded vocals, and then moonlighting in bars chasing the real thing. It's like if Freddie Mercury had a side gig working at Chuck E. Cheese's behind the curtain. First live vocal debut? A little spot called The Station in Fern Park, Florida. Not the Whiskey, definitely not the Roxy. Just some dive bar off the Florida highway where the beer's flat and the dreams are even flatter. But that night, something clicked. Something broke loose. The animatronic stopped, and the animal in him actually woke up. And from then on, Jani Lane was no longer behind anything. He was the show. So now we're in Winter Park, Florida. Plain Jane is cutting demos.
Dance on the play! Dance on the play! Dance on the play!
Real early stuff, the kind of recordings that smell like mildew and desperation. Probably tracked in a studio that doubled as somebody's cousin's weed closet, but it didn't matter. That itch was there, and it was too big for Florida. So in spring of '84, they pack up what little they got, guitars, maybe a stolen traffic cone, and roll west. California, to be exact. Not just any part, Hollywood. But not the rich Hollywood. Not the cocaine and convertibles kind. We're talking about the Hollywood Bowl Motel. The kind of place where the sheets are stiff, the air conditioner coughs blood, and hookers bang on the wrong door by accident. It is the place where hope goes to get mugged. And they were broke. Literally mustard packet sandwiches broke. The kind of broke where you just walk into the local 7-Eleven just to sniff the hot dogs. Phone calls home became lifelines. Hey Mom, yeah, we're totally fine. Just wondering if you could Western Union like $1,000 by tomorrow maybe? And to keep the lights on, Jani worked in a porn warehouse. Not starring, not directing, just sorting tapes in a back room with the floor probably squelched a bit when you walked on it. Titles like Boob Raiders 3 and Inspector Gadget Gets Fisted stacked to the ceiling. Meanwhile, they're all living in one condo. 13 dudes, 2 bedrooms. You got guitar cases in the bathtub, bass amps as coffee tables, and the smell that could have legally been declared a biohazard. And who's footing the rent? New guitar player Paul Noble, who probably had the only credit card in the group. It wasn't a band, it was a sweaty, loud, half-starving cult held together, basically on a whim. But by 1985, these maniacs were making noise. On the strip, at the clubs, the name Plain Jane was popping up on flyers, and who are they opening for? Warrant. Yeah, the same band that Jani would end up fronting. Plot twist. Like Bruce Wayne opening up for Batman. They weren't legends yet, but they were there, on the fringes, gnawing their way into the scene one gig, one sleazy club owner, or mustard sandwich at a time. But here's where the stars finally line up. 1986, the universe just decides to shuffle the deck all of a sudden. Plain Jane's bass player and guitar player just bail. Probably couldn't handle one more night sleeping under a crash cymbal. At the exact same moment, Warrant's singer and drummer end up piecing out of that band. Like some cosmic Craigslist swap meet. We'll trade rhythm section for frontman with bleach blonde ambition. Eric Turner, Warrant's founding riff slinger, had already seen Jani doing his thing. Seen the guy spit out melodies like he was mainlining Sugar and Heartbreak, pulling choruses out of thin air like card tricks. He knew. Lane didn't just sing. He sold the story. Even if the story was just, here's my tongue, here's your thigh. So he picks up the phone. He's like, hey, man, you and Sweet want to come over and jam? And where do they meet? DB Sound in Hollywood, which sounds like a gear rental joint, but back then it was a portal. One of those crusty rehearsal rooms that reeked of stale beer, where every other band was convinced that they were 2 months from MTV and one guitar solo from signing with Geffen Records. So Lane walks in with Steve and Sweet, sits down with this half-dismantled version of Warrant, and they start jamming. And not just play together, they snap together, like some glam Voltron made of hooks, harmonies, and cheekbones. And that room, that moment, that was the start of the good times, the bad times, and every whipped cream-soaked memory in between. Because that's where Jani Lane's real story began, the iconic chapter. The one with gold records, lawsuits, bottle service breakdowns, and platinum regret. The rise was coming, fast, and it would either crown him king or bury him beneath the throne. So now Warrant's rolling through LA, packing out clubs, cranking out hooks, and every label in town starts sniffing around like it's feeding time at the zoo. They almost steal the deal with A&M Records. Everything's looking sweet. Hell, they're even tied to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure soundtrack. Talk about prophecy. Somehow the whole thing fizzles out. One day it's a handshake, the next it's a ghosted voicemail. And then comes Tom Hewlett. Now this guy is not some industry goon with a cigar and a Rolodex. We're talking the architect behind the Beach Boys, Elvis, the dude who probably invented the concept of the tour bus breakdown. He sees Lane and says, yeah, I've seen a million wannabes, but this guy, frickin' firecracker. So Hewlett doesn't just get him signed to Columbia. He becomes Jani's mentor, the closest thing to a father figure since Ozzy Oswald was booking bar gigs back in Brimfield. And they would end up riding that rocket together until cancer took Hewlett out in '93. But before the fall, there's the rise. And holy hell, what a rise. 1989, Warrant drops their debut, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. And the title? It's not ironic. Thing hits like a champagne bottle to the teeth. Double platinum. Number 10 on Billboard. And it's all Lane. Every song. Every heartbreak, every wink, every cry for help wrapped in a catchy chorus. He wrote the damn thing top to bottom. The singles, Down Boys.
Where the down boys go. Oh!
Sometimes She Cries.
It just tears her up inside.
Big Talk. And then boom, Heaven.
Heaven isn't too far away.
That one goes to number 2, and suddenly the kid who was programming animatronic raccoons is making teenage girls cry in shopping malls. Then comes Cherry Pie in 1990. If that first record was a rap on the door, this was just a full-blown kick right through the whole damn thing. Another double platinum, climbs to number 7. Jani writes 4 more top 40s. Cherry Pie.
She's my cherry pie.
I Saw Red.
I saw red.
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Not no secret down in Uncle Tom's cabin.
And Blind Faith. And this album doesn't just sell, it oozes out of every car stereo between Detroit and Del Taco. And it's interesting because it's such a double whammy with the albums, just bam, bam, one after another. And this second album already saw him growing a lot, especially with I Saw Red, which is actually written about him catching his girl with his best friend. A very saddening story, but he took this batch of lemons that he had and just made lemonade out of it all the way. Uncle Tom's Cabin just rocks hard, and of course Cherry Pie is full of these really catchy riffs and one of the catchiest choruses of any song. These guys are totally on fire. And he even dabbles in film, co-writes and performs The Power with that bare-knuckle, sweat-soaked, meathead flick Gladiator in '92. Not that Gladiator, the one with Brian Dennehy, not Russell Crowe. Think more punches in parking garages than Roman epics. And then the third album drops, Dog Eat Dog, same year, '92. It's not as shiny, darker, rougher, more real, like a hangover after a 2-year champagne bender. Still, it goes gold. Hits number 25, but the cracks are showing. The glam's fading, the grin's twitching. Grunge is waiting at the door and it's holding a shotgun. So it's '93 and the champagne's flat, the girls are gone, Jani Lane's had enough. He walks out on Warrant in March, right as the glam ship's taking on water and Nirvana's lighting the whole damn thing on fire. Says he's going solo, wants out. He wants his space. Probably wants sanity too. Because you don't get that when your biggest hit is about dessert and your deepest cut is buried under makeup and missed calls. But here's the twist. 6 months later, he comes crawling back to the group. Not for nostalgia, business. Warrant's trying to wrangle a new deal with CMC International, a label that basically adopted every glam refugee who hadn't overdosed or shaved their head yet. So Lane plugs back in, patches things up, and bam, new chapter. The records? Ultraphobic in 95, Belly to Belly in 96. These albums weren't chasing platinum. They were survival albums. Grunge had gutted the scene, and Lane was writing lyrics like he knew the party was over, but nobody had cleaned up the blood. He was trying to evolve, but that voice, smooth as a velvet rope and twice as noose-like, still screams heavy metal. And the people just weren't buying Hairspray anymore at that point. They were into flannel and feelings. Still, they kept pushing. Greatest and Latest in 99, aka Remember When We Mattered? And in 2001, a cover record, Under the Influence. Last chance love letter to their roots before the tide pulled them under completely. By 2004, it blows up again. Personal, business, the usual mess. Lane bails. There's only so many times you could stitch the same wound shut before the whole damn arm falls off. But glam is a cruel mistress. She doesn't let go so easily. So in 2008, like some rock and roll Groundhog Day, Lane's back again. This time with the original lineup. A full reunion. Few shows. Fans come out. Older, bit on the rounder side, crying a bit into their Coors Light. It could have worked, it really should have worked, but by September, it's dead. Lane's out. Irreconcilable differences, which in rock speak means too many lawyers, too much baggage, and not enough Xanax. But from then on, it's Warrant versus Jani, but with a twist. They're both playing the same songs. One band, two ghosts. Every chorus, every hook, every fist in the air anthem written by the same guy, now split down the middle like a divorce settlement with guitar solos. Jani's songs never left the stage, he just couldn't always be on it. So by the early 90s, Jani Lane's life starts looking less like rock fairy tale and more like a fever dream, directed by David Lynch with a Warrant soundtrack. Between label politics, internal meltdowns, and the grunge hammer dropping like a guillotine, he starts branching out, acting of all things. Shows up in Caged Fear, High Strung in 91. It's not exactly Brando-level drama. Think more straight to VHS with boobs and bullets, but hey, the guy was trying. And here's where the backstage drama starts eating the main act alive. 91, Jani Lane marries Bobby Brown. Yeah, that Bobby Brown, the one licking cherries and breaking hearts in the Cherry Pie video. The face of every hair metal fantasy scribbled in a Trapper Keeper. The ultimate rock and roll trophy wife, and Jani married her, like sealing a music video in a wedding ring. They look like Malibu, Barbie, and Glam Ken on the red carpet, but behind the scenes, it was pure TNT with a short fuse. Parties, jealousy, touring chaos, the whole sex, drugs, and dysfunction starter pack. By 92, they have a daughter, Taylor. By 93, the whole thing implodes in a spectacular divorce worthy of a Jerry Springer finale. Years later, Bobby would air out every bloodstained detail in her memoir, Dirty Rocker Boys, and it's every bit as scorched earth as it sounds. Nevertheless, he starts working on a solo album, Jabberwocky, in 93. And this thing, it's not Cherry Pie 2. Weird, wandering, ambitious little monster. As if Lane took a wrong turn into David Bowie's attic and came out with a bunch of cryptic demos and no label support. The record never sees daylight, but the bootlegs start leaking in the late 90s, popping up on eBay like forbidden fruit. One CD, $100. And it's not even mastered. It's demo level, hiss and all. Heartbreak with Lane whispering into the void. But eventually the suits and the fans want something safer. Fast forward to 96, Jani tries marriage again, this time with Roanne Brewer, who had the whole Miss Maryland USA crown thing going for her. Less rock video, more pageant queen. And for a minute, looks like stability. They have a daughter, Madison, in 1997. But stability in Jani's world is like a clean drug test, fleeting and suspicious. Eventually, by 2005, marriage number 2 would be circling the drain and goes out with the same bitter paperwork as before. So in 2003, he drops his first official solo record, Back Down to 1. It's shiny, punchy, full of hooks. Lane in full Warrant regalia, but with less hairspray and more shadows under the eyes. The label, Z Records. Sounds like a tax shelter, but then gets reissued by Immortal Sidewinder in 2006. But right after it hits, he crashes. Checks into rehab. Alcohol, drugs, exhaustion. Same damn cocktail that killed 1,000 rockers before him. And this one just came with room service and a daily schedule. 2004, he tries to mount a comeback on the Bad Boys of Metal tour and bails after 8 shows. The engine sputtering. Behind the scenes, turmoil. On stage, probably magic if only for a minute. Somewhere in that haze, he's singing theme songs for a novel. The Devil of Shakespeare, backed by James Young from Styx, Ron Flint from 2020, and Chip Z'Nuff of Enough Z'Nuff fame. It's like some post-glam fever dream supergroup for book nerds. Then there's Magna Carta's 2005 Rush tribute, Lane throws down vocals on Bastille Day and the 2112 overture Temples of Syrinx, which is wild, because Rush fans can be a bit on the cultist side. And Lane's from the school of sugar slick choruses and pop metal sheen. But damn if he didn't pull it off. Like a mall rocker doing sacred prog with a hangover and hitting every single friggin' note. And that same year, he pops up on VH1's Metal Mania. Stripped down, crooning acoustic versions of I Saw Red, Cherry Pie, and Heaven. And then boom, Celebrity Fit Club 2, the most vulnerable move of his career. He shows up looking pretty rough, sounding rougher, and people start rooting for him. America actually falls in love with his brokenness. It wasn't about the weight, it was about the damage, and the fact that he was trying to patch it up. But of course, drama's never far. He gets into a legal pissing match with his old bandmates for touring under Jani Lane's Warrant, because nothing says rock and roll like cease and desist letters and trademark filings. Meanwhile, both he and the band are out there playing the same songs to different crowds and same nights, and it's a divorce where everyone kept the kids, pretty much. But he wraps the whole whirlwind with a photograph in 2007, a covers album, essentially a scrapbook of tributes he'd been sneaking onto other projects. A little Stones, bit of Bowie, a little Jani wearing somebody else's skin for a chain. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was honest. And by then, that was worth more than platinum. So just when you think Lane's off the grid, buried under court orders and acoustic reworks of his glory days, he kicks open another side door into the rock scene. 2008, he's back in the mix, co-writing The One That Got Away for Alice Cooper's Along Came a Spider. The godfather of shock rock invites the cherry pie guy to the horror table. It's like if Vincent Price hired a mall rat to write death monologues, and somehow it totally works. But underneath that glam, Lane could definitely write. Hooks, ballads, dark stuff, weird shit. He had a pen like a scalpel. And that wasn't even the big play. Same year, he forms a supergroup with enough firepower to blow the roof off a rehab clinic. Saints of the Underground. And the lineup is Kerry Kelly on the guitar, Bobby Blotzer from Rat, aka lawsuit-wielding cocaine in human form. And you got Robbie Crane from the Vince Neil Band and later Rat as well, because apparently the whole glam world is just one incestuous jam session. Originally, they were calling themselves Angel City Outlaws, which sounds like a gang that robs strip clubs in LA while quoting David Lee Roth. They dropped Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner on April 22nd, 2008. A full album, not just a vanity EP. And it's mixed by Andy Johns. That's Led Zeppelin territory. Stones, Van Halen. You don't get Andy Johns unless you're dangerous, serious, or both. And they bring in Chuck Wright on bass. From Quiet Riot, House of Lords, the kind of guy who walks in a rehearsal and makes everyone else question their life's choices. Tracks like Bruised and Exit drop like they're trying to start a bar fight at a biker wake. It's heavy, pissed off. It's Lane without the cherry topping. Gritty, growling, and aged like a fine disaster. And then in summer 2010, Lane gets the call to do the rock equivalent of emergency surgery. Fill in as the lead singer for Great White while Jack Russell recovers from getting sliced open. That's like being asked to replace Axl Rose during a riot. You gotta have the guts, grit, and enough vocal cord damage to make it believable. And Lane steps up, not to chase fame, not for some dumb legacy, just to keep that machine running. Because when you're a lifer in this game, you don't retire. You just switch bands, switch cities, switch masks, and hope the next gig doesn't kill you. And then out of nowhere, one final chapter. 2011, he marries Kimberly Nash. Quiet compared to the neon soap opera of the last two. No cameras or glitter, just vows and maybe a tiny flicker of peace. But months later, he's gone. That last wedding ended before the honeymoon could even wear off. Like a guy who finally found someone who could have walked with him through the ashes, and the clock ran out before they got past the front door. August 11th, 2011. Jani Lane dies alone in a comfort inn in Woodland Hills, which is just about the saddest sentence you could write about a guy who once packed arenas and made glam rock feel like the center of the universe. Not a mansion, not a penthouse, a comfort inn. The kind of place where hope checks out at noon and the minibar's been raided for nothing but regret. At 5:30 p.m., the LA Fire Department calls it acute alcohol poisoning. The final encore. And no, it wasn't shocking, but it still hit like a sucker punch. Because Lane was one of those guys you wanted to pull through. He had a voice like velvet dipped in bleach and pain. A songwriter with a clown's grin and a poet's heart, crushed under the weight of expectations, addictions, maybe a bit too much fame, just living too damn fast in the wrong era. And they gave him a great send-off on August 29th at the Key Club in Hollywood, formerly Gazzari's, with a strip, once bled eyeliner and ambition. The cast was a roll call of survivors and ghosts. Great White, Quiet Riot, Enough's Enough, LA Guns, all bands who had partied with him, toured with him, or stumbled down the same fire escape of rock and roll excess. It wasn't sanitized or polished. It was loud, messy, and real, just like him. And then somebody gets the idea, hey, let's make a movie, a biopic, call it Cherry Pie Guy. Because of course you do. Announced in 2011, with Jeff Danduran set to star and direct, independent. No studio was going to bankroll a glam rock tragedy in the era of TikTok and rebooted superheroes. As of 2022, the project is still floating in pre-production limbo. Still hasn't happened though, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the fact that they're trying says something, because Jani Lane wasn't a punchline or a cautionary tale. He was a guy that wrote songs that made drunk girls cry, turned heartbreak into choruses and breakdowns into hooks. The kid from Brimfield with a name like a crime scene and a voice that wouldn't quit, even when everything else did. Jani Lane didn't die in a blaze of glory. He died in a hotel room with the minibar emptied and the world moving on without him. But that's not the story. That's just the ending. The real story is everything in between. Kid from Brimfield who taught himself piano before kindergarten, who lived off of mustard packets and porn warehouse paychecks just to chase a song he hadn't even written yet. He was never built for the long game. Too sensitive for the industry, too talented to fade into the chorus, too haunted to stay sober when the lights came up. He wasn't just the cherry pie guy. He was the guy who wrote all of it. Every power ballad, every arena-filling hook, every late-night cry for help wrapped in a 4-minute radio hit. And yeah, he stumbled hard, publicly, repeatedly. But even when he was down, even when he was out, he kept crawling back to the mic like it was the only thing that ever actually understood him. So no, Jani Lane didn't go out like a legend, but he was one. Not because he died young, it's because he lived loud, wrote truth in those sugar-coated melodies, and left behind a catalog full of wounds disguised as sing-alongs. The hair fades, the trends rot, but the songs, they still hit hard. To my subscribers, thank you for being freaking awesome. And if you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, reach over and grab that subscribe button, stick it right inside of a cherry pie, throw it in the oven, pull it out, eat it while it's all hot, and then throw some like button ice cream all over the top of it, and join the family. I want to thank you so much for watching.